do a couple things about syntax like that, but we're gonna get into that right now. First of all, this actually came about because I get a lot of questions from a lot of newer and younger players about, what does this card do? How does this effect work? Or they say like, I didn't know I could do that with the card. Or they say it didn't say that. Or just a lot of different questions. And although my favorite answer is to, if you want to know what the card does, read it. There are a few cues you can take from the card as well. There's a couple little words and key phrases. So what we're going to do today is, in this video, we will looking at some of the most common syntax within Pokemon TCGs, such as you may, up to, and as if you do, as well as a few others as well. We're also going to look at some what happens if a word's not there, such as a basic word. Also, if you see signs like plus, minus, and times, what those will mean for the card as well. So first, we're going to look at syntax. Syntax states the rules for using certain words and phrases. There's a couple other things that come with syntax, but for this video, that's what we're going to focus on mainly. So let's start off with the word you may, or the phrase you may. For that one, I have our little buddy Zigzagoon here, or Galarian Zigzagoon. We're going to look at its attack or its ability, and it says, when you play this card from your hand onto your bench, you may put 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, or one of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, the first looking at this, the phrase you may, it gives the player a choice, an option of whether or not they want to do this. So putting this card on my bench, I can decide just not to do it. Now, most people play this particular card for the ability itself, but if you decide you don't want to, you don't have to. It's the player's choice. So the main thing when you hear with you may is that it's the player's choice of whether or not to activate the ability. So let's move on. Next, we're going to look at up to. Up to gives you more of a range. If you're looking at it, it's like, say a card says search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon or up to 2 basic energies, kind of like we have here with Sonya. You're basically given a range, so you can do 1 if you want, or you can do 2, or I've seen some people even use none, because it's simply because they want to just get a look at their deck and they don't really find anything. Once again, like, your deck is not public knowledge, but when it says up to, it's a range. So some students might come to me and say, like, there's also a card called Welder that says you may attach up to 2 basic energy cards from your hand, and they'll say, well, I didn't have 2 energy cards, so I can't use it. You can, as long as you have at least 1. So it's more of a range than a you must. So think about it, because you can choose to do up to the number it specifies. All right, so next we're going to look at if you do. So if you do is kind of like a phrase like one thing coming after another. So let's look at this card right here. This is actually a new one that came out with Darkest Ablaze. We got some wonderful videos coming out for that set, like some unboxings and stuff like that. But we actually have a couple of these cards like right now. But this card caught my eye. It has an attack that says Feather Slice. You may discard a card from your hand. If you do, this attack does 70 more damage. Once again, that's an if you do statement. So one thing has to happen first and then the next. So if you were to say, I'm just going to use this attack and not do the discard a card, that's fine. You can do that, but you won't get the add effect as well. So remember, if you do means one thing comes first before the other. All right. Now we're going to look at once per turn. Once per turn that's the one that a lot of students get tripped up on sometimes, because it says once per turn. I have 2 Pokemon with the same ability, but I use the ability on one Pokemon, so I can't use it on the other. That's actually not true. The phrase once per turn really does pertain to the individual Pokemon. So we have everyone's favorite consistency card right here, Jirachi, with its Stellar Wish ability. A lot of you are familiar with it. So it has the ability, and it says, right, you can see right there, once during your turn. Once during your turn is another variation on once per turn. It's sort of the same thing. This Pokemon can use this ability. If I was to put another Jirachi in the active, say like use a switch card, and use the ability again, I could actually do that because although the card says once per turn, it's a different Pokemon. So you're perfectly fine to use this if you have multiple versions of the same Pokemon with the same ability, but this is perfectly fine if you have like, if you want to use the same ability over and over again, as long as each Pokemon is using it once per turn. Actually, the opposite of that is if the ability doesn't want you to use that ability more than once a turn, it most times will specify it. There's a card called the Dene GX. A lot of like players who play the game might know this card, but it actually explicitly says you can only use Dene Change once per turn. It means it doesn't matter how many Pokemon with the ability Dene Change you have, you can only use that once per turn. So it'll specify it in that case. All right, now let's look at the one that I think is my favorite. It's the as often as you like phrase. This usually pertains to an ability that can be used at any time, as many times as you like. So we're gonna look at one of my favorite cards from the new set, Darkness Ablaze, which is Hydreigon. Sorry for fumbling that up a little bit. I don't know. People pronounce Pokemon names different ways, so who knows? I could have gotten it right. As often as you like, you may attach a dark energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. Now, that means that if you have it, you can do it if you decide to, and then you can do that as many times as you'd like. A lot of times people will, or at least some of my students, they'll use the ability one time, not realizing that it says as often as you like, the meaning that you can basically unlimitedly use it. So it's a good thing to keep in mind when you see as often as you like. It means if you can do it, you can do it at any given time. There's no limit on how many times you can do it. All right, that's actually the opposite of the next thing I'm going to show you. It's whenever. Whenever means you have to do it. Whenever means it's a must statement. So in this card, it's actually another new one from Darkness Ablaze that is one of the promos I like. It's Arctozolt, and it says whenever your opponent attaches an energy card from their hand to one of the Pokemon, that Pokemon put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. This is it must happen. So be sure and be careful whenever Pokemon like this are in play on the field that you're keeping an eye on their ability and whenever it may trigger, just to make sure that you're constantly catching whenever this happens. Like say like if your opponent attaches an energy, make sure both players are aware. We need to put 2 damage counters on the Pokemon that was attached to. Whenever is a must, you must do it. It's not really an option like you say as often as you like. It must be done. So it's an ability it's a phrase that says whenever something happens, this must happen. So keep aware of that. All right. Next, we're going to look at sometimes my students, they'll search their deck for a card or they use a card that says search deck for a Pokemon, they'll only get a basic, thinking that I have to get a basic. That actually doesn't mean that. Now, you also got to look at, we're going to look at missing words. My favorite example for the missing word is basic. Now, whenever we saw this first card at first, it said search your deck for a energy. Some people saw it as, okay, so we're just looking for an energy. If you look a little closer, the word basic isn't there, which means that you can get any energy, meaning you can get a special energy, or if the card says, doesn't say basic Pokemon, you can get any Pokemon if it doesn't specify it. So looking at what words aren't there, such as basic, will tell you why the scope is of the effect. So this actually makes this new card Pierce really good because you can search for like hide energy. It's a new energy that came out that gives dark Pokemon free retreat when it's attached. You can look up, any energy card that you can find or you're playing in your deck. So make sure you keep an eye out for cards that like Pierce that don't tell you basic energy. If it says basic energy or if it means you get basic energy, it's going to tell you. So be aware of words that are not there that are usually act as limiters to the effect, as we would say. All right, so lastly, a little bit of bonus one we're going to look at. We're going to look at I get this a lot, so this is going out to my students that I work with. It's the finding the plus, times, and minus sign near the damage in an attack. So if you look at the attack right here for both these cards, there's the mathematical symbol for times and plus. Sometimes they include minus, but a lot of times it's hard to find that because it's usually not good a card. But for this one, we're going to look at the times and minus, or sorry, times and plus. So first, we're going to look at this Thwacky here. And ambush, it does 50 plus damage. Usually, it'll have an effect afterwards, but if all is considered to be like, if you can't use the effects on after the plus sign, usually you'll just be able to do the flat 50 damage. So the 50 damage is going to be the base damage of whatever it does. Regardless of whatever effects happen, most of the time you will be able to use that 50 damage. On the opposite side, we got the time symbol. Now, time's a little trickier because I have some students think that, oh, if I can't do the other stuff, I can at least do the 30. That is actually incorrect because if you look at the times, it'll usually say times the number of something. So this one says flip a coin for each head, for each energy attached to this Pokemon. This attack does 60 damage for each heads. If I was to roll 2 heads, this would be 160 or 120 damage. But rolling just 1 heads is 60. But also I could roll 0 heads and it can be 0 damage because 0 times 60 is going to be 0. So that's something to look out for because just because it does say damage, if it has a time symbol after it, there's a chance the attack cannot do damage. All right. So that's about it for today. In conclusion, be sure to look for these key statements such as up to, you may, and as often as you like, as well as if you do as well. Be sure to look for words that aren't there because usually that means the card can do a lot more than what it's first letting you know it can. And lastly, if you have cards with basic and times, be sure to do your math on that. Or if you have cards that do minus or times or plus, be sure to do your math on that, read the effect to make sure you're doing the accurate amount of damage that you can possibly do with the attack. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. Show your support in the comments section. Give us a share. Also, if you have any comments on things I may have left out or any other examples that you have found within the Pokemon trading card game, drop it in the comment section below. We love to hear about it. So yeah, that's about it. So remember, guys, do your best, never give up, and keep on leveling up. Thanks, guys. Bye.